Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Revolution Mindset Program. We're now on session 15 weeks within the year, which is absolutely fantastic. And as always, please let me know what your wins are, what has been your achievements over the past week, so we can celebrate them with you today. Remember, it's important for us to acknowledge the progress that we are making in order for us to keep that momentum and keep that energy moving forward. If you're tuned in, please say hi. Let me know you're here. Let me know your wins for the week so we can start to celebrate. And today we're going to be looking at the garden of the mind. So this month, this month, we'll be looking at environment. We've been looking at the three different types of environments. And today we're going to be focused on the garden of the mind and some tips and tricks and things we need to think about and reflect on in order to keep the garden of our mind clean and tidy. So Dell, I can see you're tuned in. Thank you so much for being here. It's really wonderful to have you. As always, I appreciate your support through all of these lessons. It's a huge commitment. So that in itself is progress and is an achievement as well for being here for 15 weeks straight. I really appreciate you taking out that time. I'm going to hit some confetti on that because that is a really great achievement. So what are we looking at? Well, I'm waiting for your achievements to come through. Remember, if you're watching on the replay, drop them in the comments box below. I want to know what success you're making. What are you working towards and what are you achieving? That energy is what's going to keep that momentum and that consistency going. So please share it with us. So in this session, we're going to be looking at how our mind is a garden. And when we use this analogy, we can start to take action and be inspired to want to clean that up, remove the negative thoughts, and start to plant some positive thoughts in there. We're going to talk about the concept of becoming the gardener. And I'm going to mention that in just a second when we go through some of the slides. And then third of all, we're going to look at how we need to start to uproot our weeds and start to plant some flowers in the garden. So, leading on from last session, the key learning from our last session was all about how environment creates energy, but that we tend to forget is that we hold the power to choose and shape the environments we find ourselves in. So we talked about how we can get so much energy from the environments and the tips and tricks we can take in order to change our environment and take back that power. You know, we have the control to change environment. We have control to move. We have control to bring energy into our environments. And we talked about all our physical environment last week. So Adele's sharing here, she has had a tough week, yet she was able to launch my first lesson / week in her coaching room. That's absolutely wonderful. We're going to celebrate that, Adele. And a big celebration there, because when we're going through a tough time, we have a lot going on, a lot of distractions, a lot of interruptions. Maybe the garden of our mind isn't so clear. It can be difficult for us to take that action. It can be difficult for us to succeed. And if we can succeed in those difficult times, that's what's going to make the difference in the long run. That's what's going to separate the successful people from those who really struggle. When we get into those deep, dark places, when we have difficult times, we need to motivate ourselves and continue to move forward. So huge well done. Thank you for sharing that, Adele. So as always, we open up with a quote, something for you to reflect on, something for you to think about. And the quote that I wanted to bring into today's session is from Buddha, who says that we are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. When the mind is pure, joy follows like a shadow that never leaves. So just take a moment to reflect on that. Quite a powerful quote that nicely overarches today's live session and the practical workshop that's going to follow after this. So we are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. So that gets us to think about, okay, what are our thoughts right now? What do we think about on a daily basis? What are we becoming? But then when we make that mind pure, when we clear up that garden, when we're filled with positivity, we are then fueled and filled by joy, which follows us like a shadow that never leaves. Really powerful quote. Just take a moment. If you're watching the replay, feel free to pause and reflect on that. Really powerful stuff. We're going to go deep into our mindset today. It does say, I also managed to clear and organize my office space. Wonderful. So you followed up the challenge from last week, which was to clear that. And how do you feel there? Let me know, how do you feel now you've got that new office space, that cleanse, the new place to work, all that sort of stuff. How does that feel? It really gives new energy and uplifting energy as well. I've gone through the same thing. I followed my own challenge I always practice what I preach, and I've cleaned up the environment that I'm in to work and operate faster. One of the big things, including this internet connection and being able to deliver these sessions a lot better and with better communication as well. So excellent stuff, Adele. So, as I mentioned earlier on, we've looked at 3 types of environment. In the first session, we looked at the 3 different types in detail. We looked about the 5 A's in terms of personal growth, how environment sits at that cycle that we go through in our growth, and how the better the environment that we're in, the faster the growth that we have in terms of our personal development. Our environment sits at the key. And then we looked at the social environment in detail. In last session, we talked about the physical environment and how the physical environment provides us with energy. We looked at tips on things in which we can make a nice physical environment if we're in a difficult environment, or how we can just get up and leave and move environment. And I give some experiences and some examples to that as well. And today, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the mental environment. We're going to do a lot of exercises in the practical workshop to get deeper into this. But for the purpose of today, when we look at the mental environment, we're talking about using the analogy of the garden. So our mind is like a garden. And with that in mind, the first question that I want to ask you today, I've got a lot of questions, reflective questions to ask you, is what does your garden look like? So if you have to close your eyes just for a couple of seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you start to think about the thoughts that you have. What would your mind, the garden of your mind, look like? And feel free to share it. You can keep it private or you can share it in the comments box below, but feel free to share what your garden currently looks like. Because in order for us to change it, to shape it, we need to understand what it looks like in the first place. And some questions to get you thinking. So your garden, is it beautiful and clear, full of positivity? Do you have lots of flowers? Is it well organized? Are you thinking clear? Do you have lots of positive thoughts? Are you quite happy at the moment in your life? So when you close your eyes, is your mind clear? Is that garden clear? Is it full of flowers? Is it full of positivity? Or does it contain flowers, but you can also see some weeds? You can see there's a little bit of work that you need to do. You're a quite positive person, but you have negative thoughts creep in, negative comments from other people come in, and maybe it's not so clear, your vision's not clear, your clarity, where you're going, where you're heading, how you feel. So there's some work that you need to do. You need to start to take care of the flowers and start to uproot the weeds. Or is it just messy and filled with weeds? Have you left your garden alone for some months, and has it just grown so many weeds that you're worried, you're a bit anxious, you're filled with negative thoughts? Is it like that? Or 4, is it empty just with turf? So have you not allowed anything to grow in that garden? Have you become kind of resilient, kind of shut down, sort of lack of trust in people, and your mind is just quite empty at the moment, just with turf? You just see turf, there's no flowers, there's no weeds, and you're in a bit of a bad place at the moment. What does your garden look like? It's important for us to understand what it looks like now, so we can start to develop an action plan that is going to be best suited for us. We don't want to start digging up flowers when we've got loads of flowers there. We don't want to start to unpluck weeds if there's none there as well. So it's important for us to understand where we're at. What does that mind look like? Adele is saying that her space is more useful, definitely clearer and higher energy. Nature brought inside, and my plant is growing better and faster. That's wonderful. That sounds like a really good and energetic place. Thank you for sharing that. So if you're watching the replay or you're tuned in, if you're just tuned in now, we're just going through the concept that our mind is like a garden, and feel free to share what your mind looks like, or you can keep it private. We're going to go deeper into this in the practical workshop. If you're willing to join us in 20 minutes time, we're going to look at how our garden actually looks like. So maybe your garden is nice and beautiful like this. So the garden of the mind, maybe there's lots of butterflies, lots of nature being attracted to it. You're attracting good things, good people. The flowers are growing. You're a really positive person, and you feel aligned to what you're doing, and you're on a great path. Your mind is clear. Your vision is clear. Your goals are clear. Your thoughts are clear, and you're attracting so much positivity because you're thinking so much positivity. That's absolutely fantastic. But to get to that point requires a lot of work, and it requires a lot of maintenance as well. It's not the fact that we get our garden to, and this is one of the traps that people can fall into with personal growth, is they do their good habits, they build their good routines, and then as soon as they feel really good and they've got their garden to a good space, they neglect it, and it starts to grow weeds, it starts to deteriorate, it starts to get into a bad condition, and we have to redo the work again. So we're going to go into some tips and things to think about. So things to note. So our mind is like a garden. Our negative thoughts are our weeds, and our positive thoughts are the flowers. And we need to think about how we get rid of those weeds, how we get rid of those negative thoughts and those negative behavioral patterns and thinking patterns, and how we start to plant flowers. How do we start to build up the positivity of our thoughts, build up the positivity of our mind? So we need to remove the weeds and plant the flowers. The other thing we need to be careful about is we must be mindful of who we let play in our garden. Who do we let play in our garden? Who is there? Who is influencing these weeds? Who is helping these weeds? Who's watering the weeds? Who's watering your flowers? Who are you letting play in your garden? And the fourth thing that I just mentioned, we need to routinely keep it maintained. It's not good enough just to get it in a good place. We need to keep it with our good habits. We need to keep it with our routines. And we need to keep that garden nice and tidy and make sure that we're pulling out and plucking those weeds as they start to grow early, and we continue to water the plants so we grow something really beautiful. So the next question that I have for anybody who's watching the replay, those who's tuned in, if you're watching the replay, drop your comments below. I want to hear from you. I want to know, who do you permit to garden? So who do you permit to garden? What I mean by that is, who do you permit into your garden and to play about with it? Have a reflection. You don't have to share any names personally, but just reflect on that. Is it you? Are you the sole gardener? Do you control what your garden looks like? Are you the one doing all the work? Or are you being influenced by other people? Other people coming in and watering your weeds? Other people, some people might be coming in your garden and gardening you in a good way. They might be coming and watering your flowers. They might be coming and plucking the weeds for you. But just think about the people that you let into the garden of your mind. And there's a purpose why I'm asking this question. So Della said here that garden of my mind was clutter the past week as lots was going on. I am putting work in to clear the clutter. It is growing in spite of my challenge, although slower, constant weeding. So it's honest. Thank you for sharing that, Adele. And sometimes weeds can grow faster than we expected. We can start to spot things or not spot things, and all of a sudden we've got a lot of weeds that we need to declutter or we need to uproot or remove. So start to think about, who do you permit right now? So is there anybody in there, Adele, that's helping you with that weeding? Is anybody help you with that weeding? Do you need someone to come and water your flowers while you take care of the clutter? Is there somebody in there watering the weeds, helping the weeds grow? Is somebody coming in and trampling your flowers? Who are you letting in your garden? And more importantly, who are you letting to permit actually put the garden and start to design what that looks like? Because remember, the purpose of this program, it's an internal revolution. It's taking back the power. It's understanding we have the power to create and reshape the life that we want. And it's important for us to create and reshape the mind that we have, because we become what we think. So we need to think clear. We need to think positive. So we become clear and we become positive, and we start to succeed in whatever it is that we want in life. So that's the whole purpose of the internal revolution. And it all starts with the mind. So an important session today. As I mentioned, we're going to go deeper in the workshop in 15 minutes time. So the reason why I asked that is because the first step to creating a beautiful garden of the mind is to become the gardener. You need to take the responsibility to put in the hard work. And that's a misspell there. I'll correct that on the sides. But you need to be able to put in the hard work. So you have the power. You need to take control of your garden. You need to understand that you are not the garden, you are the gardener. You are the person that sits behind it. And because you're the gardener, you can do something about it. You are not your mind, is what I'm saying here. You sit behind your mind. You're different from your mind. Ask yourself the question, who is it that knows that you're thinking? And when we all start to understand that and we start to take responsibility, we can start to get in and do some work. So who do you permit to garden? And all are becoming the gardener. So you have the power to create the garden that you want. We need to first understand that. If we don't understand that we can become the young gardener, we have the power, We're going to struggle. It's going to be a difficult job to remove those negative thoughts, to plant those positive thoughts, to help those positive thoughts grow so we can become something positive. We need to set the boundaries and become the gatekeeper. If there's people that we're letting into our garden too frequently, that are doing a lot of damage, that are being reckless, that are not treating it with respect, then we need to set the boundary and not let them in. We need to let go. We need to start to understand who is it that we are being influenced by in a negative way, and how do we cut that influence out? How do we find the right support and let people in that are going to help us do the garden with us? This is the benefits of having a coach, benefits of having a support system. They can help your garden grow quicker. They can help you clear your weeds and your clutter faster. The third thing is you need to visualize how you want your garden to look. What positive thoughts do you want to feed your mind? How do you want to feel about yourself? How do you want to see yourself? How do you want to think about yourself? You need to do the work to really reflect on and think about what it is you want to become. And fourth, you need to schedule the time to garden. You need to put some time aside. You need to put in the hard work, whether it's a weekend, a day, however much time you need to start to really reflect and come up with an action plan to turn your garden around, to make your garden more beautiful. And then you need to start to think about the scheduled maintenance that you have in order to upkeep it and to stop those weeds from coming back. So today we're all using the analogy of changing the way we think from a negative to a positive, but we're using it in the sense of a garden. I'm going to come back to the comments if anything's come through. Adele's saying, I have your support. You're always there to listen to me and guide me. And thank you, Adele. I try my best. I know I've been super busy over the past week or so, but I am here for you and you can reach out anytime. And I know that we have some really great discussions here as well, and we guide and support each other at Coach Your Mind. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Adele's saying, I'm in control. However, there's a positive and negative people sowing. I am setting boundaries with people. Exactly. Thank you so much for that. You're doing the point too. You're putting this into action. You're setting the boundaries and limiting the time with you. You're not letting them in your garden for so long, and you're using various tools and influences to clean your garden. That's absolutely wonderful. And what we're going to do in the practical workshop today is we're going to take some of these tools and we are going to look at how we can use these tools to garden. There's a lot of tools we can use in the coaching world. And as I mentioned, you can get a coach, you can get that support from someone else. But if you don't have that, you can take these tools and make your garden more of a beautiful place. So thinking about that, what work do you need to do? So thinking back to what your garden looks like at the beginning, some of the people that you're permitting into your garden, using this analogy, what work do you feel like you need to do right now? So Del, you shared, you need to do some uprooting of weeds, you need to declutter, you might need to water some flowers, you're setting the boundaries to keep people out, because it's important for us to understand what we need to do first to develop an action plan. Because what we tend to do, and we can fall into the trap of as well, is we can do the work individually, we can start to water some nice flowers, pluck some plants, but we don't notice that we're letting somebody in over here to trample them all. And by the time we notice it, we're continuously doing the same thing, and it's not going to work. We can't get that beautiful. So we need to get those people out first. We need to set those boundaries first, and then we need to look at the next step. Do I need to get rid of these negative thoughts first, or do I need to just focus on the positive thoughts whilst removing the negative thoughts at the same time? There's lots of different techniques we can use to do that. So what work do you need to do? Think about that. We're going to reflect on this deeper in the practical workshop. And then once you start to think about this, we need to remove the weeds and plant the flowers. So we need to remove the negative thoughts and thinking patterns. We need to think about how we can do this. Where are these negative thoughts and thinking patterns coming from? How do we get to the root of the weed? Sometimes we can just take a tool, we can cut off the leaves, cut it down, but we forget to pull out the roots and it grows back. So how do we start to get to the root cause, the root of that weed, of the negative thinking? And what work do we need to do to get rid of that? Is it coming from a person? Is it coming from a past experience? Are we being triggered quite frequently? Is it just a subconscious pattern that we need to do, that we need to reprogram through NLP techniques and through different ways so we can change our behavior and change the way we think? We need to really remove those negative thoughts, but get to the root. It's no good just cutting it. The second thing is, how do we start to plant new positive empowering thoughts? We need to think about the seeds that we're planting. and the people that we are letting plant those and water those seeds as well. Because some people might have alternative motives, and they might be planting the seeds to take the fruit later on. Maybe they want to come and bear fruit, and that's why they're growing a nice, I don't know, apple tree or whatever analogy you want to use in your garden. But the only reason that they're planting a nice apple tree in your garden is because they want to come and take all the fruits at a later date. We need to be mindful of the people that we trust and let in from the positive perspective as well. Always be cautious on who we're letting in the garden. But, we need to do that work and start to think about the positive, empowering thoughts that we want to have, and then how we can do the work to really believe it. How do we, sometimes what we tend to do is we like the idea of thinking, great, I'm fantastic, I'm really feeling really confident right now, I'm planting the seed of confidence, but then, we don't do the watering, we don't help that plant grow till it becomes in fruition. We tend to just plant the seed and leave it, and it dies. And we have to plant another seed, and then it doesn't grow, it dies. When we plant another seed, we need to make sure that we fully plant that seed of these positive emotions, of these positive powering thoughts, and continuously water it. We also need to clear our thinking and the landscape of our garden. Sometimes we can be, even on the positive side, we have too many different positive thoughts, so our mind's too busy. How do we just tranquil our mind? How do we just clear it, not have too many flowers, not too much going on the weeds, but just clear it so it's a nice, clear landscape with some flowers down the side, and make it the beautiful, when we close our eyes, and a good test of this is meditation. If you can meditate well and observe your thoughts, you can start to understand what the landscape of your mind looks like. But if you struggle and you start to latch on and pick on to thoughts when you're trying to meditate, or you feel a bit restless, then you can see that you need to do some work to really clear it. It's quite difficult. The fourth point and final point is we need to have that daily and weekly routine maintenance. As I mentioned earlier on, people, when they get into personal development, they pick up a habit, they do it, even if they do it for 33 days, they do it for 30 days, 66 days, a month, whatever it is that helps you get that habit in. As soon as you feel the positive thoughts of this, you tend to neglect your garden. You tend to drop those daily and weekly routines. And we fail to understand that it is so important to continue those good routines, those good habits when we're good, because that's when we're going to get the most benefit. It's more difficult to do when we're in a difficult, rough patch. We need to keep that up as well, not let anything knock us off course, but we need to not think that we've accomplished. Personal growth and maintenance of our mind is a continuous journey, or even in some cases, it's a cycle. And we need to keep positive, we need to keep trimming, we need to keep that garden beautiful. I'm going to come back to the comments, see if anything's coming through. Adele said, raising my energy through meditation and mindfulness exercises. That's beautiful. There's two tools that you can use, meditation and mindfulness exercises. That is absolutely wonderful, Adele. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that leaves me on to the challenge for the week. So we've covered everything that I want to talk about. Remember, we go into the practical workshop in 5 minutes to dive deeper. And the challenge for this week is for you to adopt a new habit that will help clear up your garden. This can be a habit to remove the weeds. It can be a habit to plant the flowers. So, for example, you could pick up journaling. You could do gratitude journaling. You could just do something called morning pages, which comes from a Judy Cameron book, The Artist's Way. There's a good way that you can start to pick up a habit of removing the weeds. And that's just a case of every morning just writing down everything that comes from your mind, and then reading it back and looking at how you're thinking. Processing everything from your mind, removing those weeds by writing everything down. So I'm going to do a bit of that in the workshop in just a second. So think about a new habit that you can adopt, whether it's a habit to remove the weeds or plant the flowers. If you want to take it to the next level, think of 2 or 3 habits, but start small, build it into your daily routine, and start to garden that mind and clear up all the unnecessary stuff that you have there, those unnecessary weeds. And on that note, we're going to go in. So we're going to look at what does our garden look like. We're going to take the first step to becoming a gardener. We're going to look at how we can start to plant the seeds of positivity, and we're going to define an action plan. So that's what we're going to cover in 3 minutes time. We're going to go deeper. If you're watching the replay, you can pause it, come back to this, but this is what we're going to cover in depth. And then next session, we're going to look at how we can increase our vibrational frequency. So to close off this whole environment, we need to understand how we're vibing, how we connect to the universe, how we connect beyond ourselves, and how we start to increase our vibration so we can attract more of the good stuff and deter a lot of the negative stuff. We're going to bring in some law of attraction to there as well, and really dive deep into our vibrational frequencies. And if you're interested to join us, you want to catch up on all the replays at your own pace, you want to connect with me, you want to ask me questions, you want to get additional support, you can find my coaching room in the Coaching Minds Hub. So hub.coachingminds.co.uk. You can become a revolutionary. You can see the Revolution Mindset program. It's all there for you. You can see what you get. And I look forward to connecting with you. And it leaves us finally in the last 2 minutes for any questions that you may have. And if you're watching the replay, drop your questions in the comments box below so I can answer them. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you guys are achieving, what you're struggling with, so I can best serve you and be here to help you. So any questions on anything that we covered today? So for those who are tuning in late, go back, you can catch the replay. We talked about how our mind is like a garden. We talked about how the first step is to become our own gardener, be mindful of who we let play in our garden. We talked about how we need to remove the weeds, those negative thoughts, get down to the root cause, not just trim them, but really pull the roots out and understand where they're grown from, and plant flowers and do some gardening on our minds. So that's what we've covered in depth today. I want to thank you, Adele, and the few other people that have tuned in whilst we've gone through that. I really appreciate all the input you've given and the wise words, Adele, today. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing your personal experiences as well and what you've gone through. I really, really admire that. And a huge thank you to everybody who's watching the replay. I will see you all in the workshop in a couple of minutes' time. Have a wonderful rest of the day, evening, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you in session 16. Thank you, everybody.